of 11 different activities that I use, whether it's individuals and societies or English, that I use the whiteboard for. So I'm just going to explain kind of some of them, and I'll email them to you guys so that you have it. One of the things is brainstorm, and the brainstorming you do in like a think, pair, share type thing, where the kid, you give them a topic of whatever you want them to write on. I do 5-minute writings once a week, and I'm just checking their verbs or just checking their punctuation or whatever the math thing is that we're testing that or looking at that week. So I'll give them a topic, and then I'll have them write down all of the vocabulary they can think of on the whiteboard, because then it gets them writing, but they actually like writing on the whiteboards. And then they get in a pair, and then they make sure that they have, the same stuff where they think together of any other things, and then they get at their tables, where they have 4 at their tables. And then on a piece of paper, they'll actually write down, or else I'll give them space on the whiteboard, and they'll actually write down all of the ideas. So then the whole class has done a brainstorm together, but they're doing it by themselves first, in a pair second, and then as a whole group so they can see all the different ideas. So that's one. Another one, it's not necessary to use the whiteboards, but because they like to use them so much, I do reflections on them. So for example, if I want just simple, quick answers of how do you feel like you learned today's lesson, how do you feel like you learned yesterday's lesson, they just write a number there, or give me one thing that you learned today, and they could write a complete sentence of something that they learned, and then I don't have to take it home, look at it, grade it. I can literally just look at all of them together. One-word summaries. If we're talking about right now, for example, we're talking about discrimination, bias, culture, all that kind of stuff. So after we've read something, you know how the kids, they want to explain everything. They want to put it into as many words as possible. Well, instead of doing that, we'll just do one-word summaries where they just write one word of what happened today, or one word about what they read. Another one, same theory, ABC summaries, where they'll each get a letter. So if you get a letter A, you have to find something with the letter A that goes along with what we talked about. I do spelling tests every week. So one way to either practice or to actually do the test is I'll have them, they'll write down the words, the 10 words, on the board, and then when we're done, they'll hand it to the person next to them, and the person next to them will erase any letters that they got wrong. So for example, if they wrote house, H-A-U-S-E, they'll erase the A, and then give it back to the person once they're done correcting all of them, and then that person has to correct it. If it's a disaster, like they can't understand, they just erase the whole word and have the kid start over. So that makes it so that the student actually has to correct it themselves, and it's not just looking at it, trying to figure it out. I think I told you guys this last time, parts of speech, because they have such issues with parts of speech. I'll write all of the parts of speech on the board, and then I'll give a word like my mom, and they'll have to write, noun, or you, they'll have to write pronoun, ran, they'll write verb, just to get them used to it, and then I'll give them a parts of speech, and they'll have to write one of them down. That's obviously, I don't know if you guys have to work on that kind of stuff as well. Mine obviously do. Compound, complex, simple sentences, I'll just pull one out of a hat. And we're just starting this, so this is obviously what I'm going to do, because we're just working on the parts of speech. But so we're now working on these 3 types of sentences, and so I'll pull one out of something on a piece of paper, and they'll write a compound sentence, and they'll have to write one in a group, and then one person, I'll just roll the dice that's on the board, and one person, that whoever represents that number, like number 1, 2, 3, or 4, whoever represents that number will stand up, and if it's a compound sentence, they get a point. If it's a complex sentence instead of a compound, they'll have to explain why, what they thought it was, so that helps. Mine still have a lot of trouble with numbers, so I'll do number combinations, like 45, 63, 82, 100, and they'll have to write the combinations, and it's just an easy way to practice numbers. Pictionary, they'll be in groups at their tables, and they'll send one person up at a time, and I'll give them one of our vocab words, and then they go back and do Pictionary, and the first person in their group, or the first group to say the word, wins the point. Listen and draw. They'll sit back to back. They'll get in partners and sit back to back. And this works for description, for describing things, for adjectives, for all that. So let's say they draw a hat. So there's a house. They're sitting back to back, and one will have a house drawn, and the one that has the house drawn will describe it to the other one, and the other one will have to draw it, and they'll see how close they get to see if they, have the same thing drawn. And then the one I wanted to play. Have you guys ever played telephone? Okay. So I'm going to grab it